yourself something to drink. Those yellow things are deceptively delicious. So, featured poet Ash Smith is the author of the chapbooks Watershed from Dose Press, Come Such Frequency from Ducey Press, and various other publications and ephemera. She was until recently a managing editor for the small press and journal Little Red Leaves. She is working on a collection called Pigeon of Tears and tumbles about politics of sound and pop culture depictions of decapitation at Opened by Customs. I'd like to hear more about decapitation at some point. Nothing gets as good a laugh as decapitation, I've always found. So, we always begin with the question, why poetry, Ash?
It's a good question. So, why poetry for me? I guess it's an open-ended question.
It's very open, just to see what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's like a couple of ways to approach that. So, I think that my personal relationship with poetry kind of comes first through probably my earliest poems that I wrote were actually song lyrics. Mm-hmm. And when I was a kid, I grew up in the New Braunfels area. My mom worked in a pottery shop outside of Green Hall, and I would wait for her to get out of work and like write songs for the performers there.
Wow.
Like, and I think like I can like sell them these songs, and then they would like play them and stuff. So I would write like country songs mostly, and they were like very like, you know, nice little lyric tops that I thought would be like catchy tunes. But nobody ever bought any of them. So I kind of just expanded from there. So I've always been really more interested in the lyric side of writing rather than, say, the narrative side of things. And yeah, I guess like at some point in high school, I got into the beat writers. And,
great.
You know, just I had this, I'm just remembering, like I had this period like in 8th grade where I would like sell romantic poems to kids at school, like to give to their girlfriends. So I'd like write, because I guess that's how a lot of people actually get into writing, is to like try to get a date.
Yeah,
but I was like trying, yeah. And so I kind of forgot about that. But yeah, and so then later when I went to college, and I realized like this was something you could actually like talk about that has like a long history, and it wasn't just like something from a greeting card or that like got, you know, buried with Jack Kerouac or something like that. Then I was really interested in trying to talk about kind of like the lyric properties of language and the philosophical properties of that. So yeah, and one way, poetry is like such a weird medium because it comes to us handed down through these historical contexts. So when you ask like why poetry, it's like we almost like have to also answer the question like what poetry, because it comes in like, you know, there's the written form on the page that we mean by poetry. There's like the visual dimension of like how,
which I want to talk to you about.
Yeah, like how things are arranged. And then there's also like, you know, under that huge umbrella of what poetry is, there's the performative dimension of like people reading and performing their work.
Why poetry for you personally?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think that like kind of one of the reasons why I keep being drawn to poetry is like, in a way, there's so much that can happen under that umbrella. That like there's so much room to explore and keep innovating in that big canopy that we receive.
Well, let's do the what poetry, but with a little more focus. What should a poem do in your estimation?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be prescriptive about it, right? But I think like for me, when something feels like, yeah, what should a poem do? It's a hard question to answer. I've been thinking,
we can move on.
well, I've been thinking recently, like, I mean, there's the standard answers, like that it should like be a motive, like kind of. I guess the last time that I came here, or the first time I came to Malvern, there was they were having a reading by Wandale Smith and Watwin, and a great poet, Julie Schofield, who's living in Austin for a little while longer. And they have all lived in Austin before, but they've moved on, and they were reading things about their experience of living in Austin and what it was like to like have a home here and like try to make a home. And it was a great reading, and it kind of reminded me that one of the things that poetry has consistently done for me is be a sort of way of investigating phenomenon in the world more deeply, sort of inserting myself into my surroundings and understanding what it feels like to be alive more, maybe.
Cool. So you sent me Pigeons. What's the title again of your new book?
Pigeon of Tears is the working title.
Thank you. And I've been reading it, and it seems really ambitious. So
That's
maybe we could talk about what you want the book to do, or even, you know, pick out a single poem. What do you want the reader to get from your work?
This book I began writing as part of NaPoWriMo, like in April. There's a lot of people that...
Explain NaPoWriMo.
Okay, it's National Poetry Writing Month. In April, there's a lot of people that write a poem a day. So I started doing it as a challenge to myself, and I didn't finish all of April because it's really hard to write something every day. And so at one point I got down to like, I could only come up with this one line, which was like the Pigeon of Tears, and I was like, nobody wants to read about the Pigeon of Tears. But a great poet, Danielle Pavunda, was really encouraging about that. And all of a sudden, people kept talking to me about pigeons, and they became weirdly fascinating to me because I hadn't ever really considered them in poetry before, or like because they're so ubiquitous. They're just like really common and around us all the time. And
well, Ashbury's got some pigeons.
Yeah, they're everywhere. Like once you start looking for them in this book.
Pigeons on the grass, alas.
Yeah, this Raul Zarita book. This picture on the cover is of a pigeon.
That's a pigeon.
Yeah, because his dedication is actually for this book is "We are tortured pigeons of love." It's part of the dedication. Well, anyway, so pigeons became like kind of this organizing device for me as this kind of like very common phenomenon and animal in the world that was kind of something that could adapt and survive and live in lots of different environments and urban environments. And so concomitantly with that, I was trying to develop a writing style that I could work in on a daily basis that could account for the pressures in my life against writing, like working and commuting and being a parent and all of these things that pull you away from being able to write things. It was like I needed to find a form that I could still work in. And so that's part of how these poems were born. Like they have really quotidian and daily aspects to the writing, but also kind of try to reach out for more than that.
So speaking of the daily aspect, they kind of look like prose poems on the page. And can you maybe talk about the shape then? And then, so you've got prose poems, you've got one or two that are traditionally structured, but you've also, I guess I don't have any of the ones where you have the floating margin, where you're
Yeah, I do
have a lot of space, but it's still kind of basically a square.
Uh-huh.
So can you talk about that aspect of the structure, even the way it looks on the page?
Yeah, I guess, like I was saying, I've kind of been more interested in lyric dimensions of writing and what the line can do, like how the line breaks space. And I've been really interested in the visual aspects of writing as well. But with these poems, or one thing I found is it's really hard to get people to print things the way that you typed it up on your computer. So it's really difficult to translate. If you're really wedded to the look of your poem, it's gonna probably get a little bit, it's gonna be different once it comes out in a publication or in some other format. So in these poems, I started doing this thing. I started actually doing it before in like my earlier chapbook Watershed, where I would do a couple of spaces, a period, and then a couple of spaces as kind of this internal unit, internal line break. So if the margins of the poem shift, the line is always kind of like internal to the structure. So it doesn't exactly matter if it changes from like mobile device to, you know, an online publication to, you know, a printed magazine in that format. It's almost like it kind of preserves its shape and has this adaptive pigeon-like nature because now it seems like poems appear in all these different formats in their life cycle, and they're almost like a different manifestation each time. They take on a different form. So basically that's kind of what I was going for, something adaptable that
like the pigeon.
Yeah,
excellent.
A pigeon-like form.
Okay. Well, cool. So a couple more questions. You've got an MFA from Texas State. Any advice for our viewers or our audience today about MFAs or Texas State?
Texas State was a really good school for me in some ways. It definitely, I'm sure there's exciting things going on at other programs, but I'm always really surprised about the quality of education I received there. When I talk to other people about their educational experiences, I feel like we really got to read a lot about European modernism and make things, like to have a hands-on experience of making art and chapbooks.
Oh, nice. And you've continued, you've done some publishing, you were an editor of Red Leaves.
Yeah, I mean...
I don't know about Red Leaves, if you could tell us about that.
Yeah, that was a project that I did with some good friends of mine, CJ Martin and Julia Drescher. They have a book press now called Further Other Bookworks, and some of their books are available here on this shelf.
Are they in town?
They were in town until recently, and they're now in Colorado Springs. Yeah, we started an online publication so that it would be free and so that we could practice coding and use some tech skills. And then we also had like an ebook series with some really great reprints. Like we reprinted Beverly Dahlin's first 3 books and a lot of first-time books by, for example, Devya Victor, who's a great writer, and her latest book is just out right now. You can see it on the corner right behind Polly's head. But so it was, I mean, small presses have really kept poetry alive through the years, and there's so much, there's a lot of fun to be had and a lot of connections to be made.
Okay. Any tips for people on making connections? Or?
Just don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
Just email anyone and they probably will be happy to hear from you.
All right. Well, be sure to read the Room poem.
Okay, I actually found
You have that printed out?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll leave these here if you want this on the page.
Okay.
Now is the time where I get out of the way and you read poems.